and welcome to another episode of the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition's Small Business Forum. I'm your host, Dave Dadekian, a small business owner here in Rhode Island. I own Eat Drink Rhode Island, and today we've got a candidate for governor. Gregory Stevens is running for governor of Rhode Island on the Democratic ticket. So there'll be a primary September 8th, and we've got Greg with us now.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
I'm doing well, Greg. Welcome to the forum. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think we were talking before, you being a small business owner, and we'll get into, your businesses and what you've been doing in a minute or two. But I think is key to what we're doing as well. So it's great to have a conversation with you. Why don't you start, though, by telling our listeners and our viewers, a little bit about yourself, your background, and that sort of thing.
Well, Dave, I grew up in Rhode Island, West Warwick, working in the mills, doing some truck driving, and eventually getting out on my own and starting my own business. My first one was a bicycle shop up in Foxborough. And I did that for 10, 12 years. And then I decided that I wanted to get back into the restaurant business that I was in my early 20s. So that's where it began with Pat's Italian. And then after opening one, we opened a second in North Attleboro. Then we opened one Frankie's Italian Bistro, Wickford on the Water, Rachel's Cafe. We had a number of different brands at one time. And then we decided to just focus strictly on the Pat's Italian brand. That's the one that does the best for us, and it's the most recognized brand in Rhode Island. So we have our sauce now in the supermarkets, and we're getting ready to open our fourth location in Warwick.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. There's a lot going on all the time.
That's great. I didn't know about the new one. That's fantastic to hear. Yeah. Yeah. So Coventry, Johnston, and Cranston, right? Those are the ones that are open now.
Coventry, Johnston, Cumberland, and
Cumberland. That's Cumberland. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I knew there was a C. I was sorry. It took me a second there. So the Warwick's coming. That's great. Yeah. Obviously, in my world with food and drink, I've been to the Coventry one's 10 minutes from my house. So my daughter has friends who work there. So nice. It's a great small business. It's nice to see that spot there. We don't have a lot of full service restaurants here in Rhode Island. Plus, you do takeout as well, so that's always a plus as well.
Yeah, actually, we opened about 2 weeks before COVID.
Yeah, I remember. No, I remember. Using you for takeout during COVID because. It was an interesting time. A lot of people that we talked to, had unfortunately that timing of opening at the beginning of 2020, and you weathered through though. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's the underlying issue of it all. Through it all, you made it through, and that's nice to see, especially now if you open the fourth.
Right, but it's a challenge, and I think we face one challenge after another in the restaurant industry, right?
Absolutely true.
Went from COVID, and now we're dealing with food costs, rising food costs, and labor costs, and it's a fine line between red and black in our business.
Absolutely true.
So you're watching everything.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, why governor? What made you decide to throw your hat into the ring?
Well, David, spent a lot of years complaining about our government, right? In Rhode Island, it's such a great state, and I've been here for a long time, but I just never see change. I never see the things change that we need to have changed here. I had a lot of backroom deals. There's a lot of the issues I think with the state is that there's big companies donating and sponsoring certain candidates.
Yep.
So, utility companies, insurance companies, the prices just keep on rising, and we're not stopping it.
Yeah.
So I said, what ends up happening, I think Rhode Island ends up settling. We're settling for slow moving projects. We settle for potholes. We settle for the price of everything going up. And I just don't feel we need to do that. We need to say the buck stops here. Let's end this now and start working on bringing bigger companies to Rhode Island. It's fun to have the Fidelities and the Amazon warehouses here, but those particular companies pull from all the small businesses in the state.
Right.
We need good, high-paying tech companies. I want to hear the name Google and Palantir and Meta. I want to hear the big companies because we have a breeding ground for these engineers and technical people. We have some of the best schools in the country here.
Absolutely.
And let's take advantage of that. And it all trickles down. We get the big companies here. Our tech people stay, instead of leaving the state for something, Boston or California or Silicon Valley.
Right.
Let's keep them here. I think everything will improve if we do that. And I believe our economy will improve as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, more residents spending their money here at the very least. I mean, there's obviously a lot more to it than just that, but that right there is a key driver for a lot of small businesses here. Yeah, you talked about costs. All these issues that are happening right now. There's a lot, that are out of our control. But it's interesting. The one thing we hear from a lot of our members. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a chef who owns a place in Providence yesterday, and he said his number one issue right now is Rhode Island energy. Utilities and things of that nature. What do you see there? What do you think with infrastructure and utilities you think is a possibility for governor?
Well, I believe with Rhode Island Energy, I mean, it's tough that it's a conglomerate that we don't really have much choice to use.
Right.
But I mean, we can't just rubber stamp them every time they want to increase the prices by 30, 40%. And that's what they do. It's not like 5%, 10%. I just saw my bills yesterday when I paid my 15 Rhode Island Energy bills, 40% increase. Yeah. So, I think we need to make them look at their own business, and their own structure. Maybe they need to figure out a way to cut cost on their end instead of us always supplementing their cost. They don't seem to ever change or ever give anything up. They're always taking from us. And I think part of that problem is, the backroom deals, the politicians that we have today, they're not stopping it, and I don't owe anybody anything. If I'm there, I mean, we're going to make sure that they look internally first before they start looking at the people of Rhode Island to pay their bills. I know there's a lot that can be done.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned you don't owe anyone anything. That's a it's a great sentiment to think about. This is your first role in politics. Have you dabbled at all before, or this is the first?
No, it's my first.
Yeah. All right. Well, good for you for jumping in. That's
and running a business is similar to running a state. I mean, we have to stay within a budget.
Yeah.
It's so important to do that.
Absolutely.
And we have to increase revenue, and to do that, we increase sales and use tax. There's a lot of money out there that's not being collected. The way I see it, and we're going to get out there and get that money back. I know, there's, I think out of a $14 billion budget, maybe $4 billion of it we supply. The rest comes from the federal government. But there's ways to make sure that money is being spent properly. I think we need to do some audits. We need to take a look at regulations and get rid of some old, outdated regulations. A lot of stuff has to be modernized in the state.
Very true. Very true. Have you had much interaction? I don't know where you live as a resident, but with General Assembly members and folks in the House and Senate here in Rhode Island so far, or have you just kind of?
No, I don't know any of them, and it's probably a good thing. I'm from
Wakefield. Not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah.
I'm down in Wakefield, but Dave, I can work with both sides too. I don't have a preference. I'm not gonna sit on my hands if a Republican has a good idea. I'm going to listen to everybody. And there's some things that they have that I'm going to definitely want to use. And I just think we just need to come together between the two sides and work things out. Do what's best for Rhode Islanders, not what's best for the party necessarily.
Right.
We need to do what's best. And we need to put some money back into the pockets of hardworking Rhode Islanders. We keep taking. We need to put some money back.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. How does, a lot of people, they talk about small business, they talk about, minimum wage going up, things of that nature. And I know obviously that affects you with your businesses. But at the same time, with employees making more, hopefully they're spending more at our businesses. How do you see that growth and change over the last few years?
I've got it's funny. I was looking at a want ad that I put in recently, and I had to pull one up from 2020, and I was offering $13 to $16 an hour for a line cook. Now I offer $20 to $23 for a line cook. So that's a big jump in 5 years. Is it hurting us? Probably. The bottom line is being hurt. But do they deserve that? Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They deserve to make a living wage, $20, $23 an hour, $40,000, $50,000 a year. And I see that across the board, not just in our industry, but
right.
Let's say assisted living facilities and nursing homes are paying these CNAs $16, $18 an hour. They should be well into the 20s. And those are some of the things I'm going to fight for: better wages for all industry. If McDonald's can pay $22 an hour, then an assisted living facility can pay $22 an hour. And I think if they go to work and make the money they deserve, they're going to be happier at work and they're going to do a better job.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think a lot of small business owners do feel that way and do try to do the best they can there. It's just, costs are prohibitive right now.
Look at rents.
Right? Yeah, housing is off the charts. I was just about to switch to talk a little bit about infrastructure and things of that nature, because as governor, a lot of those things do affect small businesses. Housing, we should definitely talk about if you have some thoughts there, but also just the roads and the plowing and all the rest of it. The DOT it affects our small businesses. It affects how people get to us and where they park in areas of the city and things of that nature. What do you see for changes there? What do you see for growth?
Well, I see putting the right person in charge of the DOT, because I can only do so much.
Yeah.
But having the right people heading up my departments, that's where. And if it takes a countrywide search for someone to head the DOT, someone with a lot of experience, but there's a lot of failings going on there. I see road projects taking 3 or 4 years. That shouldn't take that long. I see the fact that Route 4 coming from here, from Wakefield, has only gone north. How did that even happen?
Yeah, right.
And now it's going to take till 2028 to get it to go south. It took 50 years.
It's crazy how long it seems these projects take. I mean, I understand they're massive engineering projects. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say they're simple, but it does seem striking how long they take.
Right. And, maybe we can look at other states and see why their projects get done so quickly. Is it the construction companies that we're using? Is it because everything's done in-house and the way the bidding works? I don't know, but I'd like to get to the bottom of it and find out. I see bridge work. I see potholes. I hit a couple recently. Why weren't you out there immediately? Yeah. Maybe there should be a pothole hotline, right? That we can call and mention where the and send somebody over. Send a couple of guys over there. Probably at this time of year, hanging out at the garage, waiting for
right.
Waiting for something to do. We can find something to change.
Yeah. So housing, any thoughts there? I mean, that's certainly been a big issue, and I know a lot of small business owners have mentioned that as something that when they try to hire people, it's been a difficult issue for them. What do you think there?
There's a lot of problems in the housing industry, and a lot of it has to do with regulations and zoning and building permits. The zoning in particular, and I can understand what happens with these builders. They're forced to use a half-acre lot or a third-acre lot, and there's no sense in putting a 2-bedroom ranch on there with a 1-car garage. They're just not going to make the profit they want to make. So they're putting 2-car garages, 4-bedroom homes. I mean, remember 30, 40 years ago, families were probably 5 or 6 to a family. Now it's likely to be 3 or 4, and the houses are twice the size. So I feel cutting back on some of the zoning requirements will help. Maybe more duplexes or something. Maybe even working something out with some of our state land we have so much of. So that there's a lot of things that can be done. The outdated regulations are causing a lot of issues. And I know permitting for myself, it takes so long.
Yeah.
Right. There needs to be some type of fast track permitting. And I would like to create a department that strictly handles permitting for small businesses and for contractors. And you'll be assigned a person and we'll walk you right through to the end. I deal with it. The last place I put together in Warwick, almost 6 months for a permit for turning a lobby into a restaurant. That should never happen that way.
No, it's true. One of our board members, Hugo, opened up a spot in Warwick a couple of years ago, and it just took forever for him to do minor changes in some cases. Certainly there are big projects, like the fire suppression, things of that nature. But there's,
safety is important.
Yeah, of course. But the little stuff, the permitting took forever.
And that's the best people to work with is fire. I found, the deputy chief was a pleasure to work with. The rest of the inspectors, not so much. You kind of stand at attention and hope you'd petrify that they're going to find something and deny you. And they don't make it easy. They don't give you we're going to be looking for this, we're going to be looking for that. Instead, they wait for you to make a mistake, and then they jump up. Now you got to redo the drawings and spend another month waiting. So yeah, there's definitely some things that can be fixed there. And the housing, I don't really hear any answers. I think Helena mentioned something about taxing the top 1% or taxing millionaires. Throwing money at a problem always sounds good, but it usually doesn't solve the issues that we have. The underlying issues will not be solved that way.
Yeah, no, certainly it depends on the problem, but yeah, it's a very good point. So this is, this has been a great conversation. We touched on a lot of topics. Is there one in particular that we haven't mentioned that you wanted to bring up, or anything you wanted to say before we go?
I would say, I really want to improve the life of the seniors in our state. I've seen my mom go through assisted living and through nursing care here. I don't like the fact that they have to be absolutely drained of their bank account before they can get any type of medical help. I mean, it's so embarrassing, some of the things that I see.
Good point.
And the shortage of help. I think we need to maybe with trade schools or VOTEC schools to get CNAs in their apprenticeships and pay them well, and really improve the care for our seniors. That's really something that I'll focus on.
Fascinating. Yeah, no,
but it's a challenge. I'm looking forward to my next challenge. I've had them all my life, and this will just be the newest.
I was gonna say, I don't want to minimize any small business out there outside of food and business, but food and beverage. But it's not easy running restaurants. So I know you've cut yourself a backbone and some uphill climbs you've had to face over the years. So that's a good to keep in mind when thinking about governor.
I love it. I love the people. I love working with the Rhode Islanders. I know what they deserve, and they've been so quiet for so long. Nobody's out there fighting for them. I'm going to fight for them.
Great to hear.
We're going to see some change.
All right. Well, Greg, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Best of luck with everything. For those of you out there watching, listening, the primary is September 8th for the Democratic Party. So keep an eye on that. We've got a few months to go, but I'm sure I'll be ramping up during the summer season. Yeah, exactly. Right. Good luck with everything, Greg. Good luck with the fourth location. It's great to hear. And thank you again for being here.
All right. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Take care. All right. Thank you, as always, for watching. As I mentioned, pay attention to your elections. Make sure you're registered to vote. These are extremely important times for that. And as always, thank you for following us. Thank you for listening on your favorite podcast channel or watching on YouTube. RISBC.org is the website for the coalition that you can sign up for our mailing list and get all the news. And I'll link all that down below, including links to Greg's website and all the information for his campaign for governor. Until next time, thank you very much. Thank you and take care.